Good evening. Welcome to another Wednesday evening where we are going through the book of Revelation, and we are in chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7. So we've gone through, of course, the first 6 chapters. We've already spent some time here in chapter 7, so we're kind of on the wind down before we get into chapter 8. So leading into chapter 7, the book of Revelation, of course, as we've discussed, written by the Apostle John, writing from the island of Patmos, Greek island off of the coast of Turkey and Asia Minor and all of that. He is put there on exile or banishment by Roman Emperor Caesar. Oops, hang on. Okay. And so keep Sister Diana in prayer. She wasn't able to make it, just heard up. So thank you for that. So Apostle John on the island of Patmos, sent there by Roman Emperor Caesar Domitian about the year 96. So since we know that Jesus's ministry was in from the year 29 into the 30s, if John were, say, 20 years or so in his 20s, then we're 60 years later, so he would be in his 80s now. Last surviving member of the group of apostles. So chapter 1 gave us an introduction to the setting where John is on Patmos in exile, and he is addressed by Jesus himself. He's given a revelation of Jesus Christ, which some of our Bibles may have that as the full title of the book. So chapters 2 and 3 are messages or letters that Jesus has for John to send to the angels or pastors of the 7 churches there in Asia. After that, in chapter 4, John gets a vision of a heavenly, sees the Father on the throne in heaven. In chapter 5, the Lamb of God comes before the throne and receives a scroll with the 7 seals. And in chapter 6, he begins to open those seals. The first 4 seals are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Seal number 5 is the martyrs under the altar. And seal number 6 is some of the devastation to be taking place, where we see things like it says in chapter 6, verse 12, great earthquake, sun became black as sackcloth made of hair, whole moon became like blood, stars of the sky fell to the earth. We've been having interesting conversations and different thoughts on the stars falling, and that stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. Sky split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, every mountain and island removed from its place. So, and then the folks hiding in the caves and the mountains, wanting the rocks to fall on them as they are trying to hide from the wrath of the Father and the Son. So Brother Fay Worski, in his book, Revelation of Jesus Christ, His Return, His Judgment, His Kingdom, his perspective is that Revelation 6 ends right at the end of the 3.5 years of tribulation, and that chapter 7 is taking us back to the beginning. There are some who think the book of Revelation is straightforward chronology from start to finish. Others see it doing sort of a going forward, then a rewind like this. Others see it doing kind of a umbrella overlapping, where you've got this umbrella here, like the 6th seal, and then the different trumpets under that. So there are different approaches to understanding how this all looks out. For our purposes, we're basically just reading the chapters, getting our feet wet, getting comfortable with it, at least the very least, being able to understand what the words are that are being said here and what's simply being said at face value. And we can talk about some different thoughts that are out there, but the main takeaway for us is just getting familiar and comfortable with what it actually says. So that brings us to Revelation chapter 7. Let's read it again together. Revelation 7, verse 1. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, so that no wind would blow on the earth, or on the sea, or on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living God. And he called out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth, or the sea, or the trees, until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. Verse 4. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. From the tribe of Judah, 12,000 were sealed. From the tribe of Reuben, 12,000. From the tribe of Gad, 12,000. From the tribe of Asher, 12,000. From the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. From the tribe of Manasseh, 12,000. From the tribe of Simeon, 12,000. From the tribe of Levi, 12,000. From the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. From the tribe of Zebulun, 12,000. From the tribe of Joseph, 12,000. And from the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 were sealed. Now you know why I have my water bottle right here. All righty, verse 9. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation and all the tribes, peoples, and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, and palm branches were in their hands. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the angels were standing around the throne, and around the elders, and the four living creatures. And they fell on their faces before the throne, and worshipped God, saying, Amen. Blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power, and might belong to our God forever and ever. Amen. Verse 13. Then one of the elders responded, saying to me, These who are clothed in the white robes, who are they, and where have they come from? I said to him, My Lord, you know. And he said to me, These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation, and they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. For this reason, they are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will spread his tabernacle over them. They will no longer hunger nor thirst, nor will the sun beat down on them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the center of the throne will be their shepherd, and will guide them to springs of the water of life, and God will wipe every tear from their eyes. What a happy ending to chapter 7 there. So as we've looked at this, we've seen how with 144,000, it's written fairly literally, and there are different interpretations. We'll get to Brother Worski's on that. But face value, it's written pretty straightforward and literally. 244,000, 12,000 from each tribe. And we talked last week about not necessarily being limited to there are only 144,000 followers of God left on the earth, and they all happen to be Jews, and they all happen to be exactly 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. God could arrange that to be the case. He's God, but that's with the statistics and numbers, that's kind of unlikely, but anything's possible. And we talked about how from verse 9 down, we're talking about a different group now. While those 144,000 will be on the earth and will be descendants of the tribes coming on down, just as they were the original 12 tribes that came out of Egypt. Well, the Jewish nation today, the Jewish people today, even when there wasn't a nation before 1948, those of Jewish descent trace back to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob's sons and daughter, and so on through there. So verse 9, going forward here, this is now a different group. This is a group, while the 144,000 are limited to Jews and limited in heaven, as it's described here, the description from verse 9 forward, we're now in heaven, not on earth, and we're not limited to Jews. Verse 9 says, we're seeing people from every nation, all the tribes, peoples, and languages who are here, where in heaven, before the throne and before the Lamb. They've got their white robes, they've got their palm branches, and they are worshiping. And angels and heavenly beings are worshiping with them. And verse 10, the elder asks John, who are these here? And so Brother Clay's excellent question from last week, which group is he talking about? And so as we look, we've seen those with the white robes. Those are the ones that are there in heaven. So those are the ones being asked about. And so John says, you know better than me, basically. And so he answers in verse 14, these that you're seeing here in heaven from all these different nations and peoples and languages, all these people are coming out of the great tribulation. And they've washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. And so now they're before the throne in verse 15, and they're serving him. And I love how verse 15 ends. For this reason, they are before the throne of God. They serve him day and night in his temple. He who sits on the throne will spread his tabernacle over them. beautiful imagery of covering, of protection, of sealing, of claiming. Reminds me of Jesus's desire, even before Palm Sunday, right? And during his Passion Week, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I wanted to gather you as a hen gathers her chicks, but you weren't willing. And so just seeing that constant desire of God to be bringing his people in and tabernacling with them and protecting them. And then the chapter ends talking about the quality of life that they're having there. No more hunger or thirst, no more scorching sun or heat, right there with the Lamb in the center who's shepherding them, and in heaven, guiding them to springs of water of life, and God wiping their tears. So beautiful ending to chapter 7. So before I get to Brother Worski's thoughts, as we're refreshing and revisiting this, any initial thoughts or questions pop into anyone's mind on what we've seen so far in chapter 7? All good? Well, let's see what Brother Worski has to say about this. Revelation. Let's see. I should have already had this open to this. Let's see, chapter 9, chapter 6. All right, here we are. So chapter 7, which Brother Worski's book, he very conveniently has his chapters coinciding with the chapters of Revelation. So chapter 7 in Brother Worski's book deals with chapter 7 in the book of Revelation. I thought that was pretty spiffy. So on page 74 in his book, he mentions in the first paragraph there, in his perspective, chapter 7 returns 3.5 years to the midst of the week to begin the 7 trumpets. Goes on to say, there's a need to seal the servants of God, and a short delay is called for until this is done. Okay, we saw that. Now, here's where he has a perspective here that not everyone agrees with. He may be right. I may be wrong. We could both be wrong. We'll see. In the middle of the next paragraph, he says, talking about these being sealed, he's talking about the Jews. He says, God, will not restore them in the church or as the bride. They will possess the land promised to Abraham. And then they would never be separated from the land again. Let me just pause right there. This is where we need to be sure and clear when we're talking about some of these things and some of these terms we use. I try to say, for example, the word kingdom. Kingdom can be used to describe a couple things. God is king over the universe. So the whole universe is his kingdom in that respect, whether you're part of the church or not, whether you're saved or lost, whether you are demon worshiping, serving Satan and just committing mass murder or whatever the case may be, God is still king over all the universe, including all of those. So there's that aspect of it. More specifically, when we talk kingdom in our context, I've come into the habit of using the phrase, you may have caught me saying this, bridal city kingdom, putting those 3 words together. The bride. Okay, who is the bride? Well, the bride is the one who is betrothed to God. We've seen in our Sunday school class that the covenanting together at Mount Sinai was a betrothal with all the elements of the classical wedding scenario there. We know from Acts 28, verse 20, Paul says Jesus purchased the church with his blood. And we know from John chapter 3, John describes himself as the best man. And so when Jesus got baptized, he didn't get baptized because he had any sins. Baptism doesn't deal with sins. You get saved before you get baptized. Jesus wasn't just showing us what to do to follow him. Jesus getting baptized was his part of the betrothal. John the Baptist in John 3 describes himself as the best man, who I believe is also going to be part of the bride as well. But that was his role in that ceremony. So just as we get betrothed to Jesus through our baptism into the local church body, so too Jesus likewise got baptized as the groom in that betrothal. So there's the bridal sense being set aside for the Lord to be our husband. It's an Old Testament concept. It's in some of the Old Testament prophets, where Hosea and Isaiah talk about some of these things. For example, where the Lord himself says, you will no longer call me Bailey, you will call me Ishi. You will no longer call me my master, you will call me my husband. So that's Old Testament stuff there. And so Old Testament Jews, the plan all along was for them to be in the bride. So I say bridal, city, and kingdom. We see at the end of Revelation, spoiler alert, it's also talked about in the Old Testament, a new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. We're told that the current heaven and earth will pass away. There'll be a new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem, and described as a city. And we'll see as we get towards the end of Revelation, the context there, this is a city for his bride serving in his kingdom. So all these kind of words go together. So I try to use all three words at the same time. Anytime I'm talking about this intention of the kingdom, I try to say bridal city kingdom so that we know what we're talking about. We're talking about the bride that's going to be in the city that is part of his kingdom, where the lost will be in eternity in the lake of fire. The saved, unbetrothed will be on the shores of heaven, beautifully saved, healing for the nations and all that stuff happening. Those who've set themselves aside for service through either the Old Testament covenant or through the New Testament and those Jews who come to Jesus towards these end times, I'll be part of this bride. That is the bridal city kingdom group. Jesus gives parables about the kingdom, about service. And he talks about how the folks like the Pharisees, those are the Pharisees who missed the mark and turned into legalists and elevating themselves. He said, you're the sons of the kingdom. You of all people, you're the sons of the kingdom. You're going to find yourselves cast out of the kingdom. Doesn't mean they lose their salvation. And you're going to see tax collectors and prostitutes brought in, sitting at my table in my kingdom with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that right there shows that it's an Old Testament and New Testament coming together concept here. While God has unique plans for Israel in the end times and the millennium and all that, and unique plans for his church and all of that, there is a coming together also that Jesus specifically talks about, sitting together with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it's not like he's got boys over here and girls over there, Jews over here, Gentiles over there. We know that in this church age, that barrier is broken. Well, why would it not be broken in the end times? He's the one of breaking barriers. So Brother Worski's point here, that he will not restore them into the church or as the bride, they'll possess the land promised to Abraham, and they won't be separated from the land again. I'm not sure I'm fully on board with that concept of the blessings to Israel being limited to the land, not being part of the bride, especially when it was such a heavy concept in the Old Testament, and Jesus speaks of these Old Testament saints being in the kingdom with him. So any reactions or thoughts, or anyone confused, need to kind of go through this a little more? I know it's kind of a lot, but everyone okay so far? Sure. So there's a debate or a question over the place of Israel, saved Israel, if you will, in the end times and the millennium and on from there. So Brother Orski's personal take is that not part of the bride, at least at this point. He goes on to say, going to the next page, those who flee, talking about fleeing the Antichrist, those who flee without turning back will be delivered. Those who hesitate will perish. He says, Jesus says, remember Lot's wife. He says he believes that the sealing of the 144,000, the 12 tribes, is figurative of the sealing of the righteous saints. These saints are the righteous remnant of Israel, the church. It began with the remnant of Jews believing and Gentiles being grafted in. That much is absolutely true. The church started out 100% Jewish, and then Gentiles like us have been grafted into it. And so, but he sees this more not literal as being Jews, but more a picture because we're spiritual Israel now. So that's his take on that. And it seems to me straightforward, literal, but just presenting different thoughts there. He says at the bottom of 75, I'm prone to believe the sealing in the forehead is spiritual and therefore symbolic. So it's something that, of course, God would recognize and the angels would recognize, not necessarily something physical that we would recognize. He says, because the 12 tribes of Israel are named, we're prone to interpret these verses as Israelites that are sealed. He says, yet because they are not presently serving Jesus, I, Brother Worski, am persuaded that in these verses, they represent the spiritual Israel of God, which would be the church. So that's his focus there. On the next page, he has some different things numbered off here. Mentions in the bottom of his point number 4, cannot be Israel that's left behind because they do not keep to the testimony of Jesus, but it is the church. Revelation 12, the Antichrist, Satan persecutes the woman who gave birth to the child, which is the nation of Israel, and then the followers of Jesus, which is us Christian church members. So Antichrist persecutes both. We're seeing here that when he talks about those who keep to the teaching of Christ, he's not talking about the Jews. Well, right, he's not there, but he was just in the few words prior, the woman who gave birth to the child. The child was Jesus. The woman literally Mary physically at that one point, but is also the nation of Israel that gave birth to Jesus that he came out of. He says his point number 8 here, that the 144,000 of Revelation 14, 1 through 5, which we'll get to, we're in chapter 7 right now, is his bride. Those having the name of God on their foreheads, it's not unbelieving Israel. At this point, they still have a covenant with the man of sin. So he believes this is the same group that, so what he's saying is, he believes that the timing of when this is happening, they haven't turned to Jesus yet, so they're not in the bride yet. And so therefore, it can't be the Jews who are part of this. This has to be symbolic. It can't be literal. That's his perspective on that. He mentions on the next page, 77, the number represents all that are sealed, whether it's more or less than 144,000, I believe more. So he believes not only is it not limited to the Jews, but it's not limited to 144,000. He thinks that being Jews and being 144,000, that's just symbolic. It's not literal from his point of view. He also mentions further down the page, these verses name 12 of the sons of Jacob. 2 of the original tribes are removed. These are Ephraim and Dan. 2 that take their place are Levi and Joseph. So Levi was the priest tribe. They weren't given a land allotment. They were scattered throughout the different tribes. And Ephraim is Joseph's son, so kind of interchangeable there. And so the defiled tribes were placed with undefiled tribes. We talked about what happened with Dan and whatnot the other week. And so he goes on to say that the harm of the trumpets will not touch them, that's what they're being protected from. And then towards the bottom, Israel will flee into the place of protection that God prepares for them, not because they are sealed, but because they obey the message to flee as before an earthquake. So he's saying that Israel is going to flee, but not because they're protected. Israel is going to flee because they're listening to the warning and they're running. So those are some of his thoughts on that. So pause right there. Again, any questions or reactions or confusion on how Brother Worski is seeing this compared with a straightforward literal reading versus him seeing it symbolic and applying to more? So just basically 2 different ways of looking at this passage. So he goes on page 78 in the middle to say the 7 trumpets are the tribulation, and the remnant keeping the testimony of Jesus Christ is the Lord's church. They are sealed from the tribulation, but are persecuted by Antichrist and the devil. Pause right there. Wait a minute. I thought the whole tribulation thing was all this Antichrist and devil stuff. Well, Brother Worski will make this distinction between the earthly events that are happening as the tribulation, and then the direct persecution by the Antichrist of both the Jews and the church. And making a separation between what happens with natural earth and Antichrist persecution as 2 separate things. One is, he said he doesn't consider the persecution of Antichrist as tribulation. It's during the same time frame, that these 3.5 years, but he keeps that as a separate event from overall what's happening in the natural earth as the tribulation. So just aware of how he's looking at this. Goes on to talk about different ways of God delivering at the bottom of 78 to the top of 79. In Acts chapter 12, Herod killed James with a sword, Big James, and intended to do the same to Peter. God delivered both, one through death and the other from death at that time. Big James was killed with a sword, but Peter was released from his jail by the angels. God was glorified in both. Though he may let the wicked hurt them, he will protect them from the tribulations that come upon the earth. So Antichrist might kill us, but we're going to be okay from the tribulations on the earth, is kind of his point there. But even so, even for those who are martyred by the Antichrist's persecution, it's still a deliverance out of these things into the heaven. We see the glory that we see at the end of chapter 7 of those who are with God under his tabernacling protection and all of that. So I'm mentioning these martyrs. He talks in the middle of 79. These have the white robes when John sees them. And a little further down, that the elders are part of the angels and beasts, but not mentioned with the righteous saints who await the return of Jesus. So those elders are a different group there. On page 80, he mentions towards the top here, during this time of great tribulation on the world, the Antichrist and the harlot will kill many of the saints. So while the tribulation is happening on the world, Antichrist and the harlot system will be killing many of the saints. So we'll talk more about the harlot as we go. And so towards the end of the chapter, when he's talking about the protection of those who are in heaven, he says at the very bottom of page 80, the verse is speaking of the 1,000-year reign when they are with the Lord in his kingdom. So what was going to be taking place on earth in the millennium will be taking place in heaven for eternity afterwards. So basically, on the last page, talking about this chapter, he mentions second half of the chapter is a proclaiming of the blessings on the redeemed, which suffered for his name. Look at it as the opposite side of the coin of the sixth seal. So at the end of chapter 6, we have that natural disasters of the sixth seal. The end of chapter 7, we have the ministering protection and covering of God on that. So that is Brother Worski and chapter 7 of Revelation. So what do y'all think? Any reactions, thoughts, questions on his perspective versus how does it look to you, or different things that I've put out so far? How you feel about chapter 7?
A lot to take in.
A lot to take in. And I am happy to go as fast or as slow as we need to. My goal is just to make sure that we are comfortable with what is being said. So to sum it up as simply as we can, beginning of chapter 7, angels are getting ready to unleash harm, and they're told, pause, time out. Let me go seal these folks first. Then 144,000 are sealed on their forehead, 12,000 from each tribe. And after that, and that's on earth, where the destruction is going to be taking place. And then from verse 9 forward, John is in heaven, and he sees all sorts of people from all sorts of nations and languages, all praising God. And he's asked who these are, and he says, I don't know, you know. And he's told by the elder that these that are praising God in heaven from all these different nations, speaking all these different languages, they come out of the Great Tribulation. So these are those who've been martyred during that Great Tribulation, which again means the church has to be here to be martyred. Church has to be here during the Great Tribulation for that to happen. That's where these folks come from. And so now, because of their martyrdom, they are now before God, serving at the temple, got the tabernacle spread over them, and they're being ministered to. So that is the Cliff Notes short version of chapter 7. So we all ready to dive into chapter 8 now? We'll get our feet wet anyway.
Get started, right?
Yeah. Again, we can go, we can spend as much, we can go as slow as we want to, spend as much time on any chapter, any verse, as much as you all like. I'm easy peasy and here for y'all. So now what happens in chapter 8? Brother Worski believes verse 1 of chapter 8 should really be at the end of chapter 7, but anyway. So let's read Revelation chapter 8, 13 verses here. Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. When the Lamb broke the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him, so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense ascended from the angel's hand with the prayers of the saints before God. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and hurled it to the earth. And there were peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. The first sounded, and there was hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was hurled into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of waters. The star is named Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died from the waters because they were made bitter. The fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them would be darkened, and the day would not shine for a third of it, and the night in the same way. Then I looked, and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound." And that's chapter 8.
I say angel is an eagle flying.
Verse 13.
Yes.
That's because the different translators chose those different. Let's see. Let me take a look here. Yours both say angel and mine says eagle. And I'm going to take a look right here. Let's see. Revelation. That is 8:13. And this is New Testament, so that's Greek. Bible Hub here. Yeah, the Greek word there is actu, and here it says eagle as well on Bible Hub when we pull up the Greek word actu. Let's see. It's in Revelation 8:13. It's also in Revelation 12:14. So go to hold your place here. Go to Revelation 12, verse 14. Revelation 12, verse 14. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place where she was nourished for a time, times and a half a time, away from the presence of the serpent. Do your Bibles say in verse 14, 2 wings of the great eagle? That word eagle in Revelation 12:14 is the exact same Greek word that's in Revelation 8:13. Eagle flying. So that word is the Greek word here, atu, however that's pronounced. And so for whatever reason, the translators that did your versions chose to go with angel to translate the word in Revelation 8, but with eagle in Revelation 14, where the New American Standard 2020 has it as eagle in both. And looks like that's what the Greek word actually means, or how it's translated. So yeah, just kind of interesting little tidbit there. Great question. So when this happens, what has already happened on the earth? So not everyone agrees. Of course, that'd be too easy
Yeah.
because it's already complicated and confusing enough, right? Um, different people have different timelines. It's like one of the things, and I understand when I say this, unlike many others, and I mean no disrespect, just a matter of just different personality types or different drivers or interests. Obviously, revelation and end time stuff is important, and everyone's going to be affected by it one way or another. So it's important to have a comfort level and familiarity and have a handle on it, especially as ministers, preachers, and pastors. It's almost like a standard exercise for minister Bible students to read it and read through this and kind of work out your own timeline and all that stuff. See what you come up with. I have never done that. I have never been interested in that. Because I see a lot of things that could go different ways. And so I'm curious and I'm open-minded. This is why I like the past, because the good thing about the past is it's already happened. You know, I mean, people still debate that. You know, goodness. But at least there's evidence to pursue with the past. So no, again, no disrespect, or I don't think it's. I admire those who have taken the time to search out and come up with their own timelines on these things. I respect that. And just it hasn't been my field of interest. And so I'm kind of going through this. I mean, I've had a basic understanding and familiarity with the books, but I have not worked out a timeline. So to answer your question, chapter 8, which has the first 4 out of 7 trumpets, it looks like these are happening. If we follow Brother Worski's example, he says the 6th seal is at the end. So now we're going back to the beginning. It looks like the 7 trumpets are before the 6th seal. So it looks like the 7 trumpets will be in line with the tribulation and basically heralding the tribulation. If we take Brother Worski's approach and talk about the tribulation, when we define tribulation, talk about it as the things happening on the natural earth, that seems to be a lot of what's happening with these first 4 trumpets. So we can see these being the first 4 trumpets of the tribulation. And so where the first 4 seals were the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, kind of ushering these things in. And so now we see these things starting to happen with the first 4 trumpets. So my best understanding would be this is the kickoff of the actual tribulation that will be happening on the earth. Now, how much of this will sync up with the Antichrist and him making himself, basically pulling off the mask of Revelation, revealing himself and setting himself up as God in the temple and abolishing sacrifice and persecuting the Jews and the Christians, how soon that happens in there. It seems we'll see how that all looks to be lining up. But it's bad enough news that the Antichrist is going to be doing his thing, but in the spiritual and physical and human world, but now we've got all these things happening in the natural world as well. So, wow. Yeah, it's going to be like a 1-2 punch here, these things happening. So good question. Any other initial reactions, thoughts, or questions on just reading chapter 8?
Wormwood.
Wormwood, we're going to talk a lot about.
I know.
Yes. Wormwood, it's often equated with bitter or bitterness, but the actual word, we'll talk about this as we go, deals more with curse. Yeah. In fact, that's what this whole thing, the Wormwood Prophecy, is all about by Thomas Horn. And we'll pretty much be done with his book here in chapter 8. The vast majority of it is chapter 8. There'll be some stuff. Let's see, that one or there'll be some stuff in the other chapters, but the vast majority of the Wormwood Connection is in chapter 8. So we'll spend a fair amount of time on that, just making sure we have basic understanding of the possibilities, because we're talking about, is it a meteorite that hits the earth? Is it a fallen star like a fallen angel? Or what could be the spiritual application? What could be the physical application? So we'll touch base on all of that. So basically, what we see happening here, to kind of break it down real simply, starting with the first verse. So Jesus, the Lamb, breaks the last seal, the seventh seal, and that shows the silence in heaven for half an hour, and then the angels get ready with their trumpets. Now, I would naturally think the seventh seal would be after the sixth seal, would be my natural logic flow. So I would see all of this happening under the seventh seal, so to speak, as it lays out here. But it's one of those things where we're being shown in the future what's going to be brought up in the past for this. Okay, I've taken you forward this far. Now I'm going to I'm opening up now something that's going to happen before what we just did. Again, it's not necessarily all in chronological order, which is why your question was such a good one and an important one. Because it looks like these first four trumpets are the beginning of the tribulation, which we were just at the end of with the sixth seal. Following Brother Worski's layout there. So, okay, so real quickly, chapter 8, kind of to sum it up and keep it simple for closing out tonight. We'll dive deeper as we go, but just to introduce ourselves to it. So Jesus the Lamb breaks the seventh seal, and there's silence in heaven for half an hour. 7 angels get ready with 7 trumpets, and this angel grabs some incense, adds it to the prayers of the saints. Smoke of incense is ascending along with the prayers. He takes the censer, fills it with fire from the altar, and hurls it to the earth. And there's thunder and lightning and earthquake and all that stuff. And the 7 angels get ready. And angel number 1 sounds, and we've got hail and fire mixed with blood on the earth. And the third of the earth, trees, and green grass burned up. That's the first trumpet. Second angel and trumpet sound, mountain burning with fire, hurled to the sea. And a third of the sea becomes blood. Third of the creatures in the sea die. Third of the ships are destroyed. Third angel, and a great star falls from heaven, burning like a torch, fell on a third of the rivers and springs. That star is named Wormwood. And so the waters become wormwood, cursed, bitter. Many people die from it. Fourth angel sounds, and a third of the sun, third of the moon, third of the stars are struck. Third of them are darkened. So day doesn't shine for a third of it, and night is the same way. And so those are the 4 trumpets by the 4 angels. And then at the end of it, chapter 8, John looks, and there's an eagle, angel eagle, flying mid-heaven, saying, look out now, because we've already had those first 4, but these last 3, now it's going to get really bad with these last 3. And so that ends chapter 8.
We know that there's going to find that that we will have for the seal, you'll have to have the seal in order to buy food. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, there are 2. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Great point. So just like COVID panic caused a run on toilet paper. So too, panic with all this stuff going on. Yeah. Things are gonna, when a third of the supply is destroyed, then it becomes more scarce, and so it becomes more valuable, so its price goes up. And so there are going to be less people having it to buy and sell. And so the government overreach, Antichrist and his authority is going to be, and this is actually one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, there's going to be conquering, there's going to be war, there's going to be famine and death. And so the famine would be, you can see that tying into this, when we've lost a third of our supplies and resources, and then you've got government price controls in there. And to your point, okay, you have the mark of the beast, or you don't get to buy or sell. And so, yeah. So on the one hand, beautiful irony, you've got God sealing people for protection, and then you've got Antichrist sealing people, sell your soul to me and I'll feed you, kind of thing. So it did completely different sealings there. But yeah, good observation. Anything else on the adventures of chapter 8 for this evening before we dive deeper next week? All good for now? Well, that'll serve as an intro. We'll definitely spend some time getting some different thoughts on this, coming to understand how this could be playing out, what it will look like, and whatnot. So for now, we'll go ahead and stop our class and the recording, and let's get ready to meet in the center, close out in our season of prayer together.